Confidence in the LA Kings front office, not very high right now. We discuss that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. Also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, no interview today. We usually have a special guest on our Wednesday shows, but things a little bit different now that we're kind of in the heart of the off season, the dead period right now. And frankly, folks are out enjoying their off season, but we'll have another special interview here before you know it. But for today, we're going to focus on a recent article that was published in The Athletic. Now, some of you may not know what that is. Pretty respectable sports news website that's been in business for a while and covers all sports. And they released a poll of its subscribers that voted on the confidence in their favorite NHL team's front office. The specific question asked was, quote, how confident are you in your team's front office, end quote. Now, each front office was graded in 6 categories: roster building, cap management, drafting and development, trading, and free agency, and vision. Let me read that again because I didn't do a great job the first time. Roster building, cap management, drafting and developing, trading, free agency, and vision. The article starts at the top with number 1, and that would be the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Obviously, their fans feeling very, very good about everything going on for their team. So they are the number 1 team in the NHL, voted on by the Athletic readers as far as confidence in their front office. That makes sense. It goes all the way down to the bottom. And at the very bottom, at number 32, is the New York Islanders. Now, the final rankings came from a combination of voting from what general NHL fans thought about the teams and from what the specific fan bases thought about the team. So where do our LA Kings fit in as far as confidence in the front office? Well, you probably won't be surprised. Second to last at number 31, only the New York Islanders, below the LA Kings. Now, last year, the team was ranked 13th in confidence in the front office. What a difference a year can make, and what a difference one trade can make. Of course, we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. The general AHL fans actually gave the Kings an overall grade of a C-, while Kings fans themselves gave the Kings an overall D-. As a matter of fact, the Kings fan base voted the Kings dead last, 32 out of every category except one, and that was drafting and developing. But even that category was low. The Kings fans had them Kings ranked 29th in that category. According to the article, 92% of LA Kings fans, as far as who voted, changed their level of confidence in the Kings front office from a year ago. This was the biggest drop-off of any team in the NHL from the previous season as far as this poll goes. So let's talk about this a little bit. This isn't just some poll kind of put out there on X or Twitter where anyone and everyone could vote on it, and nothing against that kind of thing, but this is a group of paid subscribers that obviously are very serious sports fans, and you would think probably maybe a little bit more knowledgeable than the average sports fan. At least that's my opinion. I think it's pretty fair to say that this group that voted for the Kings, of the Kings fan base, pretty serious, hardcore Kings fans, I would think. So let's take a look at the categories and see what we think. The first category was roster building. Kings fans gave or I should say NHL fans, anybody that wanted to vote that was a subscriber to The Athletic, gave the Kings a C-. Kings fans gave the team in roster building a D-. Now, of the 13 forwards on the Kings roster, only Anze Kopitar and Adrian Kempe were drafted before Rob Blake took over as GM. Every other forward on the roster was either drafted while Blake was GM, traded for, or signed as a free agent. As of the 8 defensemen on the Kings roster, only Drew Doughty was drafted before Rob Blake became GM. The other 7 defensemen were either drafted, traded, or signed by Rob Blake. Of the 3 goalies on the Kings roster, all 3 were acquired by Rob Blake. Now, yes, 2 future Hall of Famers and 2 of the greatest Kings in history of the franchise, Kopitar and Doughty, they're not on Blake's resume. Same goes for the team's leading scorer from last season, Adrian Kempe. He was drafted before Rob Blake was general manager. Still, I don't think the remaining collection of players is that bad. For some reason, players will need to prove, that they do belong. I think that's fair. You've got Alex Turcotte, you've got Akil Thomas, players like that. We can't really pass judgment on them yet. But I think the remaining collection of players on the Kings roster put together by Rob Blake, I wouldn't say they're any worse than a C grade. How about cap management? Well, NHL fans gave the Kings a C minus. Kings fans gave the Kings a D minus when it comes to cap management. Now, the worst contract the Kings have on the books, with all due respect to Drew Doughty, is his $11 million per season contract. That was not handed out by Rob Blake. That was Dean Lombardi back in the day. Now, that said, Rob Blake did sign Pierre-Luc Dubois to that awful contract, and while it's no longer a part of the Kings' problem as far as being on their books, he did have to get rid of some assets to get that contract off the books and take on what is a bad contract. Now, not as bad as PLD's contract, but again, $5.25 million for goaltender Darcy Kemper that he's scheduled to make over the next 3 seasons is more than you'd want to pay to a goaltender who is in his position, a goalie who lost his starting job last year. $3.85 million per season for third pairing defenseman Joel Edmondson is even worse. Now, at least with Kemper, if he turns out to be at least a part of the solution in net, at least you could argue, well, that's paying for a player at a very important position. That's not the case for Joel Edmondson. Even if he turns out to be a great third pairing defenseman, that's not a significant role on the team that you want to invest too much money in. Vladislav Gavrikov, $5.875 million is a bit high, but he's just under contract for 1 more season. We also can't forget or forgive the $5 million per season contract Blake gave to then goaltender Cal Peterson, who had to be traded off to get off the Kings books with some pieces as well. However, everything else on the current roster actually is pretty reasonable. $5.5 million for the next 2 seasons for your leading scorer in Adrian Kempe is a great deal. $2.4 million per season for the next 4 seasons for your leading goal scorer Trevor Moore is great if he can keep up his production of a season to go. $6.25 million for 5 years for hopefully the future of your franchise, and Quentin Byfield should be solid as well. Again, I don't see roster management as a D minus, or cap management as a D minus, as Kings fans that voted did. I would go no lower than a C minus on that one. As far as drafting and developing, Kings fans gave the Kings why am I keep screwing this up? NHL fans gave the Kings a C plus in drafting and developing. Kings fans gave them their highest grade, which was a D of all the categories. Now, 12 players on the Kings' current roster were drafted and developed by the Kings, although the best players, as we mentioned, Kopitar, Doughty, Kempe, were all drafted before Blake took over as GM. So you're grading the team's current front office, so you can't give them credit for those picks. However, ultimately, how Quentin Byfield and Brandt Clarke turn out will, and to an extent, Alex Turcotte, will determine how this Kings front office is going to be judged as far as drafting and developing in the Blake era. If Byfield and Clarke can eventually replace Kopitar and Doughty and be those cornerstone members, then obviously the drafting and developing grade would have to go way up. Even until then, because right now it's kind of an incomplete. But I still don't give the Kings a terrible score drafting and developing. I would give the Kings a C. All right, up next, we look at trading, free agency, and vision of the Kings' current front office. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of qualified candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. Offer valid for a limited time. Go to Indeed.com/locked-on to claim your $75 credit. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, we continue our look at the Athletics poll as far as confidence in NHL teams' front offices. As far as the LA Kings go, not a lot of great grades. Let's check in on trading. NHL fans gave the Kings a D+ in this category, while Kings fans gave LA a D-. D-, the favorite grade given out by Kings fans in this poll. Trades for Kevin Fiala, Trevor Moore, Vladislav Gavrikov have been average to good, but the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade does taint everything in the Rob Blake era. Also trades, trading away players like Sean Durzi, Sean Walker, not trading away Matt Roy. It pretty much nullifies some of the deals that Blake has made for guys like Kevin Fiala and Trevor Moore and the draft pick that eventually acquired Alex Laferriere. Now we'll see what happens with Tanner Jeannot, but I split the difference between the NHL fans and the Kings fans. I would go D grade for the Kings as far as trading goes overall. Free agency. NHL fans gave the Kings a C-. Kings fans, of course, gave a D-. The only significant free agent signing to date for Rob Blake has been Phillip Danault. And I like Phil a lot. I think he's a solid piece. I wouldn't go so far as to say he's an impact player, but a solid quality player. Now, Blake hasn't signed any significant free agents, really, of note in his 7 years on the job. I'll give him some credit for finding some short-term fix veteran goalies like Cam Talbot and David Rittich and Phoenix Copley. They've all worked out very well. They've been very economical. Warren Fogel's another nice piece. Joel Edmondson, you know how I feel about that. But I'm going to go with Kings fans on this one. I'm going to give the Kings in free agency signings a D- in the Rob Blake era. And as far as vision goes, NHL fans gave the Kings a D+. Kings fans gave a D-. I'm going to go with an F on this one. There is no vision for the Kings under Rob Blake, or more accurately, the vision keeps changing. At first, it was the traditional vision of rebuilding using draft picks and then supplementing the roster and the veterans that you have, and get better slowly and steadily. But then the Kings were actually better than expected, so then the vision changed, whether you agree with that or not. And that's fine, but when you call an audible at the line of scrimmage, you better get a first down or a touchdown, and the Kings have fumbled so far with that. The Kings now are changing their vision again with another coach. They're going to try and be more gritty, more physical, more blue collar. We'll see how that works out. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that the vision will probably change again next season, because we'll likely have a new GM and changes to the front office. So NHL fans, again, grading confidence in the Kings front office, gave them a C-. Kings fans gave them a D-. For me, I would say my confidence in the Kings front office right now is probably a D. It's not failing, I guess, but it ain't passing. So, question for you coming off that. Was this a negative show? By talking about the grades that were given out and giving my grade in some categories of the Kings front office, am I being negative or am I just being honest? Now, I'm asking because I got an email from a listener who asked that I not read his email on the Friday Fan Feedback Show. He just wanted to give me his thoughts on the shows recently. And I will honor his request. I won't read the email, but I will share you what the title of his email was. And that was, quote, "You lost me with the negativity," end quote. Now, I do want it to be known that I would have been more than happy to read a negative email, but he asked me not to, and so I won't. I think if you take the time to write me and it's thoughtful, even if it disagrees with me, as long as it's not some sort of personal attack, I'm more than happy to read those emails. You might remember we had an email from Ed in Temecula. He got upset with me because I was saying that Tom McClellan should be fired, and he didn't like that I was saying that. So again, you could probably get from the title of that email that this listener, this viewer, feels like I have been way too negative lately about the Kings. So I read the email, I took it in, and I listened to what everybody has to say, but I got to say my takeaway from this was I think he's wrong. I don't think I'm being too negative. I just think I'm being honest. Now, that doesn't mean I'm right about everything. I'm not. Nobody is. But too negative by pointing out the truth? I mean, am I lying about anything? I am giving my opinion. But, like this episode, you could say that this was a negative episode. But I didn't create that poll. I didn't even vote in that poll. I did give you my grades for it, but I'm just giving you the results of an article that was written. And I think that says at least part of a story, of a picture of what a certain group of Kings fans feel about the front office. I went on a show on Monday, Locked on NHL, and I was a guest on the show. And I said that I thought the Kings offseason was underwhelming. I said that I didn't think the Kings were better now than they were at this time last year. And I said that GM Rob Blake was on the hot seat. So I guess you could say that was all a very negative show. But I'm just being honest about my thoughts on the team. I hope that the Kings do great next season. I hope that everything works out. I hope that Jim Hiller is absolutely the right guy. I hope that Quentin Byfield takes off and becomes a superstar. I hope all the young players that the Kings acquired become solid NHL players. I hope the guys we picked up in the offseason provide that extra spark that we're going to need. I hope the Kings stay healthy. I hope that everybody produces at the same level that they did last year. But those are all just hopes. Like I said, I don't feel like I'm being negative. I just feel like I'm being honest. So I realize you're not going to make everybody happy, but I say for the most part, as far as this show goes, 99% of the feedback that I get is positive. The numbers as far as downloads and listens and watches, views have been going up ever since I've taken over the show. So there are times I actually think that I'm afraid that I'm too positive in some respects. So everybody sees different things, and I'm not knocking this guy. If that's how he feels, that's fine. But he also kind of alluded to the fact that, if I didn't change, he probably wasn't going to watch or listen anymore. And I'm not planning on changing. I'm planning on being who I am. I'm being honest. It's not like everything I've said has been down on the Kings. I defended the Kevin Fiala, Brock Faber trade in a recent episode. I've talked about how I like the contracts for Quentin Byfield and Jordan Spence. So I'm not crapping on everything the Kings have done. And I don't even think the Kings are a horrible team. I think they're a bubble team. They could be in the playoffs again next year, and that's not bad. There's a lot of other teams that wish they could be in the position of the Kings. I think that we obviously have high expectations as fans, and there have been issues. There have been legitimate issues. The Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, I don't know how you call that. You got to call that a spade, right? I mean, it is what it is. It was a terrible trade. He gave him a terrible contract. It didn't work out, and he ended up having to trade him away, and it wasn't a good move. You could say that's being negative. I would say that's being honest. So, like I said, I appreciate all the feedback, whatever it is. I read it all. I take it to heart. And then in the end, I have to determine, is this person saying something that I need to hear, or is this person just seeing what they want to see and just disagrees with me? In this case, I don't think I'm being too negative, but I do appreciate all the feedback. And of course, coming up on our next show, we'll have your chance to give some feedback as well. Positive, negative, whatever it is, as long as it's sincere and heartfelt, I appreciate it. And I'm more than happy to read it on the show. Do you know how many former LA Kings Stanley Cup winners are still getting paid to play hockey? We're going to talk about that next here on Locked on LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I have used Gametime to buy tickets to NFL, college football, NHL games, and this past weekend, I used Gametime to buy tickets for a show at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and it was awesome, and I got a great deal. The app is super easy to use and navigate. Just go on the app, tap on the listings, sports, music, shows, and they will list the tickets with the best deals, and it's easy to search for tickets for teams and events. And you get the lowest price guaranteed, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So I guess this is kind of a bit of a trivia question. I considered doing a Name That King segment, which I haven't done in a while, and I kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you, but I think we did this player already. So instead, I'll just ask it as kind of a trivia question. How many former LA Kings Stanley Cup winners are still getting paid to play hockey? And I guess I shouldn't say just former. How many Kings Stanley Cup winners are still getting paid to play hockey? And I was actually surprised how many there are. There's the obvious, Andrei Kopitar and Drew Doughty, still with the Kings. Don't forget Trevor Lewis as well. Of course, you've got Jonathan Quick on the New York Rangers, and Alec Martinez now on the Chicago Blackhawks, and Tyler Toffoli now on the San Jose Sharks. And both those things are just awful to say. Slava Voinov is still playing professionally in the KHL in Russia. And then you've got goalies Martin Jones and forward Tanner Pearson are both in limbo right now. They're unsigned, restricted free agents or unrestricted free agents. We'll see if they get picked up before the season starts. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them or both of them will get some sort of a training camp invite to get a shot at joining a team. But there is one other player who played on both of the Kings Stanley Cup winning teams who just recently signed a new contract. Do you know who it is? The answer is Kyle Clifford. The 33-year-old forward signed a one-year AHL contract with the Toronto Marlies. That is the Toronto Maple Leafs AHL affiliate. This will be his 15th season of professional hockey. Now, the last 3 seasons, he's only played a total of 25 NHL games, but hey, he's getting paid good money to play hockey, and that's not nothing. So a veteran of 753 NHL games with 905 penalty minutes over that span. Fan favorite, Kyle Clifford, honest, hardworking, blue-collar guy, kind of one of those guys I guess the Kings are hoping that they've picked up in Tanner Jeannot and Warren Fogle. But we'll see. But I did see that note. Wanted to wish Kyle Clifford all the best as he continues his hockey career. How much NHL hockey he's going to have the rest of the way remains to be seen, but he's still out there playing, and again, wish him well. Also want to wish a friend and viewer of this show well also, and that would be my beer league teammate, Chuck Anderson, great Kings fan, and is an everydayer, and has been a big supporter of mine throughout the years, whether it's been this show or other shows. Unfortunately, Chuck has had some bad luck with injuries playing hockey. He broke his left leg recently in a game, and this is the second time he's had a broken leg over the last couple of years. He did the right leg before that, so it looks like Chuck might be hanging up the skates for good and calling it a career. But what a wonderful beer league career it was. And Chuck, wish you well, speedy recovery. And if it's not the last, boy, I tell you what, if it was, my wife would definitely not. She would take my skates and throw them in the trash can. But if it's not your last game, be careful out there. But if it was great playing with you, and looking forward to seeing you out at a Kings game here in the near future. Hopefully no crutches, that you're fully recovered by then. All right, for you every other dayers for about the next month or so. Again, if you missed the memo, for the next month or so, we are only doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday shows, unless there is some big Kings breaking news. In particular, if Arthur Calle were to get traded, we'll definitely jump in and do a show on a Tuesday or a Thursday. But otherwise, because it is the slow time as far as news goes in the NHL, because frankly, all the people that make these decisions and run these teams are hanging out with their families because this is the only time they get to do it. But again, Monday, Wednesday, Friday until September. And when things start to ramp up again, we'll get back into the Monday through Friday show. But we do have a show on Friday. We're going to keep the fan feedback shows going. Anything Kings related you want to talk about is on the table. It can be something serious. It can be something fun. Whatever you want to share, it is your chance to chime in. And you can also answer the question, am I too negative? We'll see about that. The email address, if you want to get an email in, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. If If you're watching on YouTube, always appreciate your comments in the comments section. Want you to stay interactive with the show on social media as well. You can follow us on X, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you on Friday. And as always, go Kings, go.